Hello and welcome to my Screencastify. My name is Mike Potnopoulos. I'm the academic coach for Springdale Public Schools, and today I want to chat about the SAQ 1 regarding the Nomads that you just took on your test. So here is the first SAQ or short answer question, and it regards the Nomads, the Comanche Indians of North America, and how they interacted with the Spanish. And you can read this and pause this at any time, and you probably have already done that. And I'm certainly not going to read it to you. But paragraphs 1 and 2 basically describe how Pekka and this last name, which I cannot pronounce, but Pekka is going on to suggest that basically the Comanche were able to interact with those Spanish conquistadors to some level, take horses, create their own empire, and do some things that were probably not thought of in the past, and that is to have uh, a nomadic migrating group of people kind of turn into an empire themselves and thus stop the growth of another empire. And so then we get into the actual questions and your response. Be sure to address all parts of the question. Again, we don't want to get into just bulletizing things. We want to actually restate the question or the idea, and then turn around and get after the answer. So initially, let's take a look at what's going on in an SAQ. You'll notice that the A and the B and the C, the three questions that go with that go with the prompt. The first one's usually a simple idea. Here we see that in the word identify, which tells us to basically just list, name, give us a vocabulary moment. And then B, it says to explain, which somewhere in there I'm going to have the word because or something that shows or suggests I have an understanding of what I'm talking about or trying to write. And so that gets a little more difficult. And then C is probably the most difficult of them all. So it's kind of a 2 inch putt, kind of a 3 foot putt, and then maybe a 6 footer if you want to look at it from that perspective. Um, so there you go. One way in which the author challenges the commonly held assumptions, and you can read that. Explain one example of a society that, and explain another one. Basically, these two questions are quite frankly they're the same. And what they're trying to get you to do is not fall into the pitfall of what some kids did on this. And that is to say, maybe they picked the Mongols and they wrote about the Mongols twice. And they wrote about the Mongols twice and kind of said the same thing twice. When in fact, that's not what the AP people are wanting you to do. They're wanting you to come up with a whole nother group of people, which gives you the reason why it's a little more taxing. The third one's a little more taxing. If you did use the Mongols twice, it's acceptable to go in a whole other direction. This one is the Mongols in that direction, and then C would be the Mongols in a whole other direction. But if you're writing the same thing about the Mongols, then you can't double dip. You can never double dip on any type of thing that's in an AP writing. So that should alarm you or alert you to the fact that okay, I need to come up with something new on this C part. So let's get into some answers that you might find for A. Identify one way in which the author challenges the commonly held assumptions about the Americas in the age of European colonialism. So I will copy that and then let's do this. Pekka challenges commonly held assumptions about the Americas in the age of European colonialism by suggesting, and that's how I would start off my writing right there. And some students won't, but you're just basically lifting the idea of the question, if you will. That's all you're doing. So you can set up good writing. And then you begin by just giving that identify moment. And there you go. You've identified that the Comanche were able to build an empire and stall emerging or hamper or whatever word you want to use, emerging empires from the Spanish English colonies. You could really stop the question moment there or the answer um, and just leave it at that. But again, I've always told my students that if you've got some bullets in your pocket, to go ahead and use them here regarding that. And so there you go. You can just kind of expound on that if you want to. And that's what I'm trying to do for you there for those students that might have done that. But you could have stopped right there. and had a good answer. There's 1 point. So then we go back up here and we find that explain one example of a society other than the Comanche that made the type of transition described by the author in the first paragraph. And so, like I said before, we could talk about the Mongols. And so let's do that. And so let's copy that. One society other than the Comanche that made the transition described by Pekka in the first paragraph would be the Mongols. And here's that beautiful word that connects it all, makes it sizzle. Because they were nomads like the Comanche, who emerged out of Central Asia and by the late 1200s were able to create their first ever or the first ever land empire that connected Asia to Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Boom. Good answer. Real simple. You want to if you want to simplify it more, you could, but you want that because you want to show that explanation, which is what it's asking you to do. And then thirdly, explain one example of a nomadic empire other than the Comanche that successfully confronted an established state or states, which is kind of asking what this is, really, because that's what he's describing. So again, it's I know some of you might scratch your head and say, hey, why can't I just do the same thing twice? Again, you know, you can't argue with it as it is on the day of the exam. So just know that you've got to do an easy thing, a middle thing, and then probably a harder thing. So this is the harder one, and the harder one is designed to get you to think about somebody else. So the next one would be, I would think maybe the Ottomans. Um, and so a nomadic empire other than the Comanche, which successfully confronted an established state, would be the Arab nomads or Turks from the Ottomans. And because they successfully conquered, see, if you just left it there before you got to because, you're identifying only, but now you're giving you're giving the explanation behind it, and you can read that. You could have done something in the neighborhood of the Mongols again, and talked about how the Mongols interacted with the Song dynasty, how the Mongols interacted with the Rus and those principalities and created the Golden Horde. You see, you could have gone a little deeper by using the Mongols again, but by just saying the same thing from B to C regarding Mongols, it's not going to work for you. So that was kind of the mistake that I saw some students making. But for the most part, good answers here, and you just follow that format of kind of easy, middle, difficult, um, and by restating those cues, if you will, those prompts, and you're going to be successful. I hope this helps. Thank you.